Module 7, Justice and the Good Society. This module we will be studying the philosophy of politics. What is justice and the good society? The Greeks had a saying, to live a good life, one must live in a great city. But what counts as a great city? Of course, it's always a matter of considerable dispute. Would you prefer New York or Omaha? Starkville or Wesson? But what the Greeks really had in mind, of course, was the idea that to live a good life, one had to live in a good community, one in which people respected one another and obeyed the rules, a community that flourished and was not overwhelmed with problems of crime and poverty, a community in which the happiness of one person was not gained at the expense of others. Aristotle's Ethics described the ideal citizen of such a community, and Bentham and Mill's idea of utilitarianism provided one description of the ultimate goal of such a community. It's the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. There seems to be no doubt about it. For almost all of us, the good life presupposes living in a good place and to live with other people. And our ability to be a good person depends at least in part upon those with whom we share our world and the society in which we live. Now, are rules needed for such a community to exist? Laws, if you would. Just think of the traffic rules alone to see how well this idea works as an account of both why there should be such general rules and how it really is in our best interest to obey them, at least most of the time. The justice system. These laws or rules require that we participate in fair institutions, in particular the justice system, but also the tax system. We willingly pay our fair share, the market system, and the system of contracts and ownership. Society will be orderly and more or less peaceful. Property will be safe and secure, personal lives protected. Justice thus results from a mutual agreement according to which we all agree to abide by certain rules and principles. The social contract was a concept that became enormously popular and powerful in the 18th century. It was a theory of the nature of society. The social contract theory views society as based upon the shared agreement of all the individuals who are its citizens. As citizens, they give up certain rights and privileges in return for protection and the mutual advantages of the political state. The best single example of a historical contract of social nature is our U.S. Constitution. Its representatives of the various states and commonwealths got together and composed this contract, setting up our very own federal government and its limitations. This is also the basic justification used by the American colonies to break away from Britain. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. The idea of a social contract was influenced by three authors in particular. Thomas Hobbes. He was an English philosopher who also defended a theory called materialism. And this materialism theory said that everything in matter is in motion. This same theory even influenced Sir Isaac Newton. John Locke was another philosopher. He was an English physician, and he became known as the father of British empiricism, as we studied empiricism in Module 5. He defended the idea of the social contract just after the English Revolution. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Now, he was a Swiss philosopher. In 1762, he wrote a very influential book simply titled The Social Contract. Well, if that's society, who then should rule? At times it seems that someone, usually the strongest or the wisest one in each group, has taken charge and given orders to the others. Looking beyond ourselves to nature, we can see these similar roles. A wolf pack is led by the strongest, smartest wolf, and without such a leader, the pack usually perishes. A hive of bees or a nest of ants each has its queen, without which there would be no hive or nest. So it is easy to presume that the emergence of a leader in our human society is just as natural. Who the leader is, of course, will depend on the nature of our society. You see, there are different types of societies. In a society where money is power, the rule by the rich will come about, plutocracy. In a society that depends on certain specialized skills like knowledge of computer, power will depend on those with merit and ability, like meritocracy. In some society, religion rules, and those who hold the power are the most powerful religious people. These are called the theocracy, or literally rule by God. In some societies, those who rule come from the highest class or caste system. This is called an aristocracy, whose word literally means rule by the best. In some societies, the ruler is one person, a monarchy, like England. In others, it's ruled by a few people, like an oligarchy. And in others, the rule is shared, such as the United States and our democracy. But what are my rights? One of the most important ingredients in most contemporary theories of justice and politics is the notion of rights. A right, essentially, is a kind of claim. Employees have a right to their salary. Students have a right to an A if they have done excellent work in a course. There are different types of rights and duties. For example, some rights are contractual. That's the type where you have the right to be paid for your work, the obligation to pay for what you buy if you pick it up out of the store, and you also have the duty to keep one's promise. Some rights are legal, such as your right to drive with certain reasonable restrictions, which are the speed limit. Other rights and duties are civil, such as the right and the duty to vote. Finally, there is a general category of human or natural rights which applies to every human being on earth, no matter what the society or the circumstances. For instance, you have the right not to be tortured. You also have the right not to be imprisoned without reason. Now, there are three main viewpoints about rights. The first is the libertarianism view. This is a type of person who defines himself or herself with a strong set of natural rights, which are individualistic. They include the right to be left alone and not to be interfered with, and the right to keep what one has or has earned, and the right to be free from government interference in all things except when absolutely necessary for the general good. Libertarians tend to be strongly against taxes and big governments, and they are strongly for individual freedoms of all kinds. Many of their viewpoints line up with what modern day people call conservatism. There's also liberalism. Liberalism holds that people are defined as selves by a strong set of natural rights, but these rights, they're a little different from the libertarian. The liberal emphasizes people's positive rights to the benefits of society, such as they believe everyone should have decent housing, education, food, health care, and security. Liberals tend to support a strong centralized government that will provide and administer social programs to provide these rights. And lastly, there's communitarian. Communitarian rejects the one side of the liberal and the other side of libertarian, with its emphasis on rights for the individual. Communitarian stresses the concept of duty instead, and many of its ideas line up with socialism. What defines a citizen is not his or her individual rights, but his or her duties. They believe that there is no self outside of society. It's all about the group. An extreme form of this belief would be totalitarianism or fascism, which holds that the individual self is literally nothing, that the whole self is defined by and is the property of the state. Well, this is it on your intro to the philosophy of politics. Happy thinking this week. Think hard.